Hello and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches, the program that takes you around the world in 25 minutes. I'm Layo Olarinde. On the program this week, UN-backed food security experts say mounting evidence of famine and widespread starvation in Gaza as the UK announces it will recognize a Palestinian state unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire. Plus, refugees fear going home amid concerns about a fragile ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia. A dire humanitarian crisis is unfolding in Gaza as a UN-backed body warns that famine is no longer a threat, but a reality. With Gaza facing the worst hunger crisis in its history, the UK has joined other countries like France in saying it will recognize a Palestinian state unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire by September.
A worst-case famine scenario is now playing out in Gaza. That's according to the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, a UN-backed body tracking food emergencies. Their latest alert says widespread starvation, malnutrition, and disease are causing a rise in hunger-related deaths.
It's clearly a disaster is unfolding in front of our eyes, in front of our television screens. This is not a warning. This is a call to action. This is unlike anything we have seen in this century. It reminds us of previous disasters in Ethiopia or Biafra in the past century. And it's clear that we need urgent action now. So this is definitely not a warning. This is a call to action.
Still, Israel denies the crisis, insisting there is no starvation in Gaza.
In Gaza today, there is no famine caused by Israel. There is, however, a man-made shortage engineered by Hamas. Now, too often, the full story is not being told. This suffering exists because Hamas has created it. The suffering exists because Hamas has made it so. So here are the facts. Aid has been flowing into Gaza through two main channels. Firstly, through weekly food packages distributed by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, and secondly, through UN-coordinated shipments of raw materials for bakeries and communal kitchens. Israel facilitates this aid to ensure the aid reaches civilians directly without being intercepted by the terrorist organization.
At a high-level peace conference in New York, the UN Secretary-General condemned both Hamas and Israel while calling for renewed political will to achieve a two-state solution.
Nothing can justify the horrific 7 October terror attacks by Hamas and the taking of hostages, both of which I have repeatedly condemned. And nothing can justify the obliteration of Gaza that has unfolded before the eyes of the world. These are not isolated events. They are part of a systemic reality that is dismantling the building blocks of peace in the Middle East. And yet, precisely because of the grim realities, we must do even more to realize the two-state solution.
Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa said his people are not condemned to exile.
This conference is also a message to the Israeli people that there is a path to peace and regional integration. It will be achieved through our independence, not our destruction, through the realization of our rights, not their continued denial, that Palestinians are not condemned to perpetual occupation and exile, and Palestinians and Israelis are not doomed to be at eternal war, that there is another way, a better way, that leads to shared peace, shared security, and shared prosperity in our region.
On Tuesday, the UK Prime Minister announced Britain will recognise Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September, unless Israel shows a serious shift.
I've always said that we will recognise a Palestinian state as a contribution to a proper peace process at the moment of maximum impact for the two-state solution. With that solution now under threat, this is the moment to act. So today, as part of this process towards peace, I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank.
France's President Emmanuel Macron has already pledged to do the same. In response, Israel says the decision constitutes a reward for Hamas and harms efforts to achieve a ceasefire.
Jordan, I think, has been the leading...
Meanwhile, international condemnation of the suffering of Palestinians caused by the war continues.
Israel's war on Gaza must stop. The unfolding humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza has reached unspeakable levels. The images of starving children in Gaza have outraged people around the world. It is a stain on our shared humanity to allow this to continue. The alarming rise of starvation and suffering among Gaza's civilian population must compel the international community to act with urgency and unity. Aid cannot be politicized. The targeting of starving civilians gathered to receive aid is unconscionable. We reiterate our calls for an immediate and lasting ceasefire, full respect for international humanitarian law, and unimpeded access for humanitarian assistance.
We condemn in the strongest terms the crimes against humanity and the genocide committed by the apartheid state of Israel against the people of Palestine. We are particularly horrified by the deliberate starvation of the people of Gaza. We call on the State of Israel to allow food and essential aid to be allowed in and to be distributed amongst the starving Palestinians. We call for an immediate end to the relentless bombardment of civilians and the destruction of their homes, their hospitals, their places of worship. We call on the world to stop the murder of children and babies through starvation. Our position remains very clear. Liberation is indivisible. We are not truly free until all are free.
UN data shows that more than 1 in 3 people are now going days at a time without eating. Despite a partial reopening of crossings, humanitarian aid entering Gaza is barely a trickle of what a population of over 2 million people needs every month. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, more than 60,000 people have been killed as a result of Israel's military campaign in Gaza since October 2023.
Away from Gaza, on Tuesday, a fragile ceasefire took effect between Thailand and Cambodia, following 5 days of deadly clashes near their disputed border. However, accusations of violations and continued shelling have left thousands of displaced families uncertain about whether or if it's safe to return home.
Despite a declared immediate and unconditional ceasefire, dozens of families in Thailand's Sisaket province are still sheltering in evacuation centers, uncertain if peace has really taken hold.
We listen to the government loyal Thai armies, about the announce, and then we wait.
Okay.
But then this issue this morning, they said, another side is start shooting, still shooting, and then still moving in. So we prepare for extended period of the operations.
Thai military patrols continue along the border. And in places like Surin, long queues for food reflect the strain of displacement. Many fled with little more than the clothes on their backs.
Everyone wants to go home, but we just don't feel it's safe yet.
On the 24th, shots were fired into the village. Someone was killed. In the afternoon, they fired again. Bullets landed next to the shop.
Across the border, hundreds of Cambodian migrant workers are returning home, some claiming they were targeted in Thailand because of their ethnicity. The conflict escalated last week near the disputed temple of Prasat Samun Thom, where artillery and small arms fire were exchanged. A landmine blast injured several Thai soldiers, leading Cambodia to retaliate, and both sides blaming each other. The ceasefire came after urgent Association of Southeast Asian Nations brokered talks in Malaysia, where leaders pledged to de-escalate. US President Donald Trump and China also called for calm.
Prime Minister Hun Manet and Acting Prime Minister Phumtham Vichayachai have expressed their positions and willingness to immediate ceasefire and return to normalcy. The United States President Donald J. Trump has been in contact with the leaders of both countries, urging the leaders to find peaceful resolution to the conflict. The Chinese side have kept close contact with Cambodia, Thailand, and Malaysia, and relevant countries to actively promote dialogue, ceasefire, and restoring peace. The presence and collaboration of all parties underscore a shared commitment to peace, dialogue, and regional stability. Both Cambodia and Thailand reached a common understanding as follows. 1. An immediate and unconditional ceasefire with effect from 24 hours local time, midnight, on 28th July 2025.
But even far from the front lines, the impact is being felt. In Cambodia's tourism capital, fears over the conflict are keeping some international travelers away.
Of course, it's not good for now, yeah. Not many international tourists, only the local people. Like I told you, that it just come for safety place, yeah.
The territorial dispute dates back more than a century to colonial-era maps drawn during the French occupation of Cambodia. Disputed temples and unclear demarcations continue to fuel tension. With over 300,000 people displaced, both governments now face pressure to uphold the ceasefire, allow aid access, and begin monitoring mechanisms. But on the ground, residents say peace feels fragile, and with accusations of violations just hours after the ceasefire, trust remains low. For now, as families wait for signs of a real end to the fighting, talks between local commanders continue as both sides work to uphold the ceasefire and pull back troops.
When Foreign Dispatches returns in just a moment, we learn how 6 southern African countries changed the tide and were removed from the global hunger hotspot list. Please join us again. Thanks for staying with us. In a remarkable turnaround, 6 southern African nations have officially been removed from the UN's list of global hunger hotspots. Once plagued by food insecurity, countries like Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, Zambia and Zimbabwe are now showing signs of real progress driven by smart agriculture, climate adaptation and strong policy.
Once known for food shortages, parts of the global south are now changing the narrative, thanks to bold reforms in farming, climate action and local investment. Thierry Vanhu is a farmer from Zimbabwe.
The Food Agriculture Organization, in collaboration with the AFC Bank, helped us so much because it also helped us acquire chemicals, fertilizers, and the financial assistance to pay our workers. It also improved in job creation. It also allowed us to sell surplus, which helped us pay school fees for our children, buy other requirements needed at home.
The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization credits a mix of strong policy, data tools, and new farming techniques.
Investment in platforms like the FAO EOSTAT have enabled meteorological forecasts, crop assessment, and food security monitoring to be sensitized at a real time. And so adopting this method also help the farmers to have real information and information at a good time so that they can easily plan their planting activities. So together, these policies, technical, infrastructural, information system advances have proven to be more efficient and have proven to be more effective when there are when the communities are trained and when the communities are trained to how to use this information, and this has helped to improve the resilience of rural economies, and one which good rains translate into secure harvest, and where farmers, governments, and partners can work together very closely. This has helped to safeguard the regions. The work that is done by the farmers in the region, and this has also helped to improve the effective implementation of the policies adopted by the government.
In Zambia, the government has also increased investment in market access, farming, and climate resilience. In Lusaka, shoppers say it feels like a turning point.
The fact that we're off the list is good news, and I'm just glad we're no longer the country that's recognized as the starving country, because we made it to the list. And some of the positive steps that the country is taking, you could talk about the ZNS initiative where they engage in state farms in the production of maize, and also education-wise, the topics about agriculture, they've been added to the curricula, and also communities, they are having mini communities where they're teaching each other about agriculture steps that they could take, and yeah, they're learning skills.
But while some nations see relief, others are in crisis. A UN hunger report released last month paints a grim picture for 13 hunger hotspots, including Sudan, South Sudan, Palestine, Mali, and Haiti. In Sudan, where famine was confirmed last year, nearly 25 million people remain at risk due to conflict and displacement. South Sudan faces a deadly mix of flooding and instability, with over 60,000 people already in famine-like conditions.
And finally, on the program in Ghana, thousands have gathered in Cape Coast recently for the Panifest and Emancipation Day celebrations. It's a vibrant tribute to ancestral heritage and a powerful call for reparative justice. The festival, now in its 17th edition, draws participants across the African continent and the diaspora, united in honoring the past and reimagining Africa's future.
It was a day of color, culture, and solemn remembrance in Cape Coast, as traditional leaders, diaspora delegates, and government officials came together for Panifest 2025 and Emancipation Day.
Moral, political, and economic ramifications. Beyond the finance, some of us want to see a time when Africans are not living at the razor edge of life, no matter where they are, no matter how rich the country is or how poor that country is. We ought to live like other people also live, find our levels of confidence, see ourselves in the future, and not to be afraid. That is also important. And that goes beyond money. It goes beyond being ourselves and also making our contributions to the world like everybody else does.
In the past and you don't remember them.
The dramatic reenactments served as stark reminders of the transatlantic slave trade, a trauma that still shapes African identity and development.
Panifest and Emancipation Day are not just commemorative events. They are acts of cultural resilience, resistance, and vessels of memory. They remind us of the tragic rupture of the transatlantic slave trade, the suffering endured, and the legacy of resilience and creativity our ancestors passed on. At the heart of this year's celebration is a call for reparative justice. We must not remember, we must act. Reparative justice demands a reckoning of history, but also a restructuring of the future. It speaks to the need for moral, economic, and cultural redress, a renewal of systems that have long profited from.
For Ghana, Panifest is more than performance. It's a spiritual and political homecoming. The festival this year, Justice, Healing, and African Consciousness, drew together royals, activists, and diaspora members from around the world.
Without question, it's long overdue. Everybody who has ever suffered any atrocity that the global community has recognized as, in fact, an atrocity, they've never, ever hesitated to address the issue of reparations. Even as wars are being fought today in disturbed areas, people are already calculating the reparative costs and repairing that land. So why would it take Africa centuries for this conversation to come up, about reparative justice for Africa? It's only with Africa and people of African descent that it's a question. But now is the time that we must raise that issue and raise our voice. And that's why I'm happy to see that the diaspora has come home to this call, have also answered the call around this theme, and that our own president, President John Dramani Mahama, is the voice for Africa, along with CARICOM, along with the U.S., to lift up the cry for reparations now. It's been too long a delay.
The Ministry of Tourism and Culture used the platform to reaffirm its Black Star Experience, an initiative launched under President John Mahama to strengthen ties between Ghana and the global African diaspora. The initiative builds on the legacy of the Year of Return in 2019, which welcomed over 1.1 million visitors and generated nearly $2 billion in economic impact, a reflection of the cultural and financial potential of the diaspora connection.
We want our young people, our creative community, our artists, to make their songs about this, to make their dance about this, to be able to have their conversations and their drama and their films about this. We must use every aspect of our creative energy to send that single message out about reparative justice.
The theme of this year's Panifest, reparative justice, is deep and is broad-ranging. It speaks to not only repatriations, it invites us to come back. It invites us to set up inquiry spaces around what it really means, not to get money for those who left and who died in the Middle Passage, those of my ancestors, from whom I am a very strong representative. I am a descendant of triumphant survivors. But the justice aspect requires serious conversations and commitments at all levels to equity.
Beyond the festivities were powerful conversations on economic liberation, colonial legacies, and the need to dismantle systems of racial and economic dependency still haunting the continent. From the door of no return to the streets of Cape Coast, Panifest 2025 served as both remembrance and resistance, honouring those who came before and inspiring those who carry the flame forward.
And that's the program for today. Remember, you can catch all our top stories and more on channelstv.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.